Have you ever caught yourself, like, spending 3 hours meticulously optimizing the layout of a virtual farm?
Oh, absolutely.
Or, color-coding your inventory in a survival game, but you simply cannot bring yourself to fold your own laundry?
Yeah, it's a universal experience.
Right. Why do millions of people eagerly spend their precious weekends, their evenings, doing incredibly complex, intellectually demanding tasks, like managing the intricate supply chains of massive virtual cities for absolutely zero pay?
I mean, it completely defies traditional economic logic. If
Yeah.
someone described these exact tasks to you as a job, you would demand a competitive
Like
salary.
out benefits.
Exactly. But you frame the exact same labor differently, and, well, people will voluntarily sacrifice their sleep to do it.
So welcome to this deep dive into the fascinating world of game design theory. Our mission today is a big one. We are going to completely stop looking at games as just these frivolous, fun little digital distractions to kill time. We are going to start seeing them for what they truly are, which is incredibly powerful systems of human motivation.
And that shift in perspective, it really changes everything about how you view human behavior. Once you understand the systems underneath the play, you start to see why we are driven to solve problems, how we learn, and honestly, what actually makes us feel fulfilled.
For me, digging into these concepts felt like a massive paradigm shift. It is like looking under the hood of a car for the very first time.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Because, you spend your whole life just being the driver. You turn the key, you press the pedal, the car goes. You're a passive consumer of the vehicle. But today, we are grabbing a wrench. We are shifting from being the passive driver to being the active mechanic.
We were looking at the engine block.
Exactly. The pistons, the belts, the systems that actually make the forward motion possible.
And to think like a game designer, you have to adopt this systems thinking mindset. A game isn't just a sequence of pretty pictures on a screen or a board with plastic pieces. Every single game is a continuous, silent conversation between the designer and the player.
The conversation.
Yeah, and that conversation is mediated entirely through rules, mechanics, and feedback loops. The designer sets up the physical laws of the universe, the constraints, the abilities, and then the player pushes against those boundaries by taking action.
And the system then responds back.
Right. It
Yeah.
is an ongoing dialogue of cause and effect.
But before we get too deep into how those systems manipulate our motivation, there's a giant roadblock we always hit when talking about this topic.
The definition debate.
Yes, the classic debate. What actually is a game? Does it need a score? Does it need a win state? Like, if I can't jump and shoot, or if there is no final boss to defeat, is it still a game?
Which, honestly, debating the strict definition of a game is an incredible waste of time.
Really, just skip it entirely.
Skip it. Enforcing rigid definitions to exclude certain experiences, it's like looking at modern poetry that doesn't use rigid meter or rhyming couplets and demanding to know if it's real poetry.
I see. If a poet stops rhyming, it doesn't stop being art.
Exactly. If we say a game must have a win or lose state, or it must have a specific type of obstacle, we just put a ceiling on our own creativity. The core of this medium, the fundamental thing that separates it from reading a book or watching a film, is not scoring points. It is volition.
Volition. The power to choose.
Yeah, it is giving the player the ability to fundamentally change the experience they are having. It's about active participation. I mean, when you watch a horror movie, the protagonist is going to open that creepy basement door no matter how loud you yell at the screen.
Right, you were just a passenger.
The tragedy or the triumph belongs completely to the director. But in a game, you have the volition to walk the other way. So if the character dies, it carries a totally different emotional weight because you made the choice. You own the outcome.
So look at a title like The Stanley Parable. It is a highly interactive narrative experience. Traditionally speaking, there is almost no mechanical gameplay.
You're just walking around.
Yeah, you are just a guy in an office building walking down hallways. There are no aliens to shoot. There is no high score. But the entire experience is built on volition. A narrator tells you, Stanley walked through the door on the left. And you, as the player, have the choice to walk through the door on the right.
And that simple act of defiance or obedience is the entire foundation of the experience. It doesn't matter if we slap the official label of game on it. It provides deep insight into how we handle authority and choice.
And there's another one in the sources, right?
Yeah, another brilliant example of finding profound meaning through systems is an intertenant project called Loneliness. It proves that you do not need realistic graphics or complex narratives to evoke deep human emotion. Rules alone create emotion.
Let's paint a picture of loneliness for the listener because the mechanics are incredibly minimalist. You open it up, and you are just a black square on the blank screen.
Mm.
You wander around, and occasionally you encounter groups of other black squares,
Okay.
but the moment you get close to them, they slowly drift away from you. There's no combat, no dialogue trees, no inventory system. You just move.
And the underlying code is beautifully stark. It is essentially just a mathematical rule, When the player's proximity is x, the non-player's squares move away at speed y. It is literally basic geometry.
Mm.
Yet the human brain interacts with that math and feels genuine visceral rejection. You project profound meaning onto a few lines of code because you are the one instigating the interaction.
And what's wild is that different people react to that exact same system in wildly different ways. Some players treat it like a punk rock anthem.
Oh, yeah, they get aggressive.
They charge aggressively into the crowds of squares, almost shouting at the screen like, I don't care that you don't want me, I'm going to disrupt your group anyway.
While other players adopt a completely isolationist strategy, after experiencing that mathematical rejection once or twice, they decide it is better to just avoid the groups altogether. They walk the edges of the screen, completely internalizing the rejection coded into the environment.
And some players, they approach the groups incredibly slowly, inch by inch. They harbor this tragic hope that if they are just gentle enough or patient enough, maybe the system will break its own rules and finally accept them. They spend 20 minutes trying to trick the geometry into being their friend.
That is pure volition.
Yeah.
The player is fundamentally altering the emotional narrative through their choices and their own psychological baggage. That level of emotional investment comes directly from the combination of constraints and feedback. Even in a minimalist environment like loneliness, the designer has placed boundaries. There are physical laws governing how you can move and immediate readable feedback for your actions.
Okay, hold on. Let me push back on this concept for a second.
Sure.
If there's no way to win, no points to gather, and you are essentially just wandering around a digital void as a black square,
Yeah.
how is this any different from just taking a stroll through a digital park? Why call it a game rather than just a simulation?
Well, it comes down to the intentionality behind the constraints. Think about a traditional game like Super Mario. It is a highly structured obstacle course. The joy comes from mastering the timing required to jump the hurdles perfectly.
Right.
Now, a game like Loneliness or the Stanley Parable is more like a sandbox. It lacks the linear finish line of an obstacle course, but a sandbox still has hard physical boundaries. The sand behaves a certain way when you try to stack it.
Okay, I see.
You can't build a tower of dry sand. You have to discover the rule that sand needs water to hold a shape. The joy and the meaning come from bumping up against the system of constraints the designer built and learning how your volition interacts with those rules.
So we have this paradigm where games are highly structured systems fueled by player volition. We accept that these sandboxes and obstacle courses can generate real emotion and meaning. But this leads to a massive psychological question. What is the fuel driving players to voluntarily engage with these complex systems for hours on end? Like, why do we actively seek out these constraints?
To answer that, we have to look at one of the most vital concepts in game design theory, which is cognitive surplus.
Cognitive surplus.
Yeah. It represents the enormous, almost incomprehensible amount of unused creative and mental energy that humanity collectively possesses. Since the shift from a purely agrarian society to an information society, our physical exhaustion has gone down and our free time has skyrocketed.
Because you just have all this extra energy.
We have billions of hours every single week of idle brain power.
Think of cognitive surplus like a massive untapped hydroelectric dam. For decades, a huge portion of humanity has spent their evenings in a state of passive consumption, scrolling through endless social media feeds,
Right.
watching sitcoms, letting the television wash over them. That is essentially letting all that water just spill uselessly over the top of the dam. You are relaxing, sure, but the potential energy is wasted. Gaming, on the other hand, is active participation. A well-designed game routes that rushing water through a turbine. It harnesses the mental energy to generate power, focus, and engagement.
And we crave that turbine because of the fundamental psychology of play. Play is not a modern invention, and it is certainly not just a distraction. It is an evolutionary survival mechanism. We play to explore our environments, to learn complex systems, to connect with our peers, and to test our absolute limits in a safe environment.
That concept of a safe environment is crucial, right?
Mm-hmm.
In real life, failure carries a massive penalty. If you fail at your job, you lose your income. If you fail in a relationship, you experience deep emotional pain. the stakes are terrifying.
Completely.
But in a game, failure is completely decoupled from real-world consequences. Failure is just data. It is the system giving you feedback so you can adjust your strategy for the next attempt.
Exactly. So when players boot up a complex game, they are actively choosing meaning, challenge, and engagement over passive consumption. They are electing to overcome completely unnecessary obstacles. They are choosing to do hard work.
And some games look suspiciously like actual work.
Oh, they really do.
If you look at titles like EVE Online or Factorio,
Mm-hmm.
players are literally memorizing thousands of item statistics, balancing massive economic ledgers, and optimizing factory assembly lines to the microsecond. They're managing spreadsheets. Why doesn't that feel like clocking into a stressful corporate job?
Because the volition belongs entirely to the player. It doesn't feel like work because you are choosing to be there and you can leave at any time. When a system perfectly aligns with our natural instincts to learn, adapt, and overcome challenges, participation elevates into what designers call meaningful play.
Meaningful play.
It is joyful precisely because it is voluntary. You aren't optimizing that digital factory for a paycheck to survive. You are doing it to satisfy a deep intrinsic human need for mastery and autonomy.
Okay, so we have this massive, untapped hydroelectric dam of cognitive surplus. We have an innate evolutionary desire to engage in meaningful play and master complex systems. What happens when a brilliant game designer takes that massive turbine of human brain power, and instead of pointing it at a fictional dragon or a virtual farm, they point it at a real-world scientific crisis?
Well, that's when you get Foldit. This is where systems thinking transitions from digital entertainment into world-changing reality. Foldit is the ultimate case study of moving the public from passive consumers to active participants in global problem solving.
Let's unpack the real-world stakes here. Protein folding is one of the most complex biological puzzles in existence. Proteins are the microscopic workhorses of the human body. They fight disease, digest food, and build tissue.
And their function is determined entirely by their shape.
Right. How this long chain of amino acids folds in on itself. If scientists can figure out the optimal, stable fold of a specific protein, it can lead to massive breakthroughs in creating targeted therapies for diseases like HIV, Alzheimer's, or cancer.
But the problem is that predicting how a protein will fold is computationally overwhelming. Even the world's most advanced supercomputers struggle with it because there are virtually infinite ways a chain can twist and bend. Computers try to solve it by brute forcing every single mathematical possibility, which takes years.
But humans are different.
Exactly. Humans have spent millions of years evolving incredible spatial reasoning and pattern recognition skills.
So researchers at the University of Washington realized they had a systems design problem. They needed human spatial reasoning. But they couldn't just hand thousands of random people on the internet a biochemistry textbook and ask for help. So they translated the rigid laws of molecular physics into a puzzle game.
They took this incredibly dense, abstract scientific data and gave it a user interface. When you boot up Foldit, you aren't looking at complex chemical formulas. You see a wobbly, three-dimensional tangle of colorful tubes on your screen. The game gives you a set of intuitive tools to grab a segment of the protein and physically pull it, twist it, or tweak its structure.
And the feedback loops are completely instantaneous. If you manipulate the shape and decrease the physical tension in the protein, making it more structurally stable, the area turns green, a pleasant chime plays, and your score ticks up.
But if you twist it wrong?
Yeah, if you create an impossible chemical clash, it turns red and your score drops. You don't need a PhD to understand what is happening. The game communicates the complex rules of biochemistry entirely through tactile visual mechanics.
And by utilizing phenomenal game design, they unlocked the cognitive surplus of everyday people at a massive scale. Plumbers, teachers, teenagers, people with absolutely no background in biology were suddenly solving protein structures that had stumped the scientific community for over a decade.
That is just incredible.
In one famous instance, the Foldit community solved the structure of a retroviral protease related to the Mason-Pfizer monkey virus. Scientists have been stuck on it for 15 years.
15 years.
And the gamers solved it in 3 weeks.
3 weeks. That is the power of a systemic translation. The game aligned perfectly with the human desire for mastery and problem solving. The players were engaging in meaningful play, optimizing their scores, and interacting with constraints. And the byproduct of that joyful play just happened to be actual, peer-reviewed scientific discovery. It proves definitively that game design is a structural tool. It is an architecture of motivation that can be applied to reality.
It really is.
But wait, if it is that simple to motivate people, why can't I just apply this to everything? Like, can a corporate manager just give their employees 100 points and a digital badge every time they clear out their email inbox and suddenly it becomes meaningful play? Can I give you a high score for taking out the trash?
No, no, that is the trap of lazy gamification, and it is a crucial distinction to make. Slapping points, badges, or a leaderboard onto a fundamentally boring or broken task does not magically transform it into a game.
Right, gamification like that is like painting racing flames on the side of a broken bicycle. It might look a little flashier for a second, but it's still not going to get you anywhere if the chain has fallen off the gears.
Exactly. Points and leaderboards are the byproduct of a good system. They are not the system itself. Foldit succeeded because it fundamentally translated the scientific problem into an interactive spatial puzzle that respected the player's autonomy. It gave them tools to experiment, to fail safely, and to learn the nuances of the system.
You have to actually build a game.
Right. If you just bribe someone with points to answer emails, you aren't offering real volition. You are just creating a transparent manipulation tactic.
The system itself has to be intrinsically rewarding to engage with. It has to feel like play. True systems thinking requires you to understand why a person wants to interact with a system, not just how to trick them into clicking a button with a shiny digital reward.
And once you start viewing the world through the lens of a game designer, you see these feedback loops, constraints, and mechanics everywhere. You look at the software you use at work, the layout of your grocery store, the apps on your phone, and you realize they're all systems desperately trying to engage you.
But very few of them are built with a deep understanding of meaningful play.
Exactly.
So if you are listening to this and realizing you want to master this mindset, we are really just scratching the surface of what is possible here. For those who want to get their hands dirty and learn the practical architecture behind these concepts, taking the full basics module over at school.thegamebeyond.com is the perfect next step. It shows you exactly how to build these turbines of human motivation yourself.
Moving from a passive consumer to an active systems thinker is one of the most empowering transitions you can make.
When you realize that play isn't just killing time, but a fundamental human drive to master systems, you look at everything differently. We moved past the distracting debate of what defines a game and embraced the truth. Games are systems of volition. We have billions of hours of cognitive surplus just waiting to be harnessed. And when we translate complex real-world challenges into well-designed constraints and feedback loops, everyday people can literally solve scientific mysteries just by playing.
Which leaves us with a question of application. How does this apply to your everyday environment?
Think about the broken systems in your own life. Look at your workplace, the division of household chores, or the volunteer organizations in your local community. Where is human energy and cognitive surplus is going to waste because the feedback loops are broken, the constraints are frustrating, or the autonomy is missing? Instead of just complaining about those broken systems as a passive consumer, how could you redesign them using a game designer's mindset? How do you grab your wrench, adjust the rules, and tune the feedback so that participating in your daily life finally feels less like a chore and a lot more like play?
Do you want to learn more about game design? Try our game design course. Go from learning the basics to becoming a master game designer. No coding skills needed. Taught by award-winning game designer Gabe Mack, this course is filled with hours of videos, puzzles, tools, and exercises to turn you into a serious game designer. Why are you waiting to harness the power of play? Visit school.thegamebeyond.com to sign up today.